This episode we're going to cover two major items. One is using lead or filler in these sort of areas, and the other thing is we're going to head back out to Simon at Elite Custom Interiors and have a look what he's doing with the door trims. So I've been fortunate enough to work now with Mothers and PPG to be able to offer a lot of the stuff that we use, so all the consumables that I'm using in the work I'm doing. And the stuff I'm using today is like the Merlon, so really good quality Scotch-Brite, comes in a box like that. And then you'll see me using the airless system through the vacuum, and we're now bringing that all to you through the astilldesign.com site. And we've got the blocks, the papers. What I've done though is that the papers come, like this one, you get 50 sheets. The problem is you need all the different grades. So we've actually taken the grades and made up a mixed box. So you can buy one box now that'll give you a range of different grades. And if you buy the long one, you can cut those down so you get 2 out of each sheet to do your half block and your long box. So you can basically spend, I think by memory, about $70, and that'll give you all the papers you need with all your different blocks without having to have, 6 or 8 boxes. Today I'm going to talk to you about a subject that comes up all the time, and I mean everyone seems to have a different opinion about it, and I know there's quite a few different ways that this can be done, but it's something that I'm going to tell you how I do it, and that's filling these up. So from the factory, they're spot welded through this line, so the guard comes up underneath and then the roof comes over the top of that, and it's spot welded. This particular car, we're fortunate enough that we found some new old stock quarters for it. So we've put the quarters on and then welded back up the spot welds where it had been drilled out, and then I've fully welded that join all the way through just to make sure that there's no possibility of anything coming back through the joint, any moisture or pretty much whatever through that join. And that normally leaves quite a big indent here as well. So when I do these, I like to run the MIG along this edge and create a line there where I can file that up and get it very close to what I need, so I don't end up with a whole lot of filler or whatever I'm going to fill that up with. So the options with this sort of job is, first of all, to put the original lead back, which is the same as the factory does. The next option is to obviously put the epoxy on it and then fill it with something. And there's quite a lot of options out there. I've always used a fibre fill filler, and the one I've been using and the current one I'm going to use on this is the Septone glass fibre filler. So it's a resin-based fiberglass filler that's got what I've always known as gorilla hair. I've been doing it that way, since I think the first car I did like that was the Fairlane, so 1990. So I've been doing all the cars since then the same way. And because I've had no comebacks with any of that, I've continued to do that, and I'm going to do this one the same way as well. Now that's not to say putting lead back in is not an option. It's just something I haven't done, and I haven't taken on the skill level to be able to put lead in. And I've had concerns about lead because to do lead filling, you have to treat the metal first, and that's like an acid-based etch to be able to put the lead in, and then when you file the lead back, you actually have an edge then to work to. And what I've found over the years, when I've taken the lead out of the cars, quite often there is rust under the lead or on that edge. So that concerns me. So I like to do the epoxy and then use a filler. And like I say, I've been using the fibre filler. There's now metal-based fillers out there as well. I haven't used those, but they probably a good option as well. So I've got this prepped up now where I've got all my edges. It's fully welded. I've got these edges right. I'm now going to give that a Scotch-Brite and make sure I don't cut through anywhere, and then start applying the filler. So I've been using the Merc and Merlon, and you'll find that on our website as well now. But so the idea with this is I'm just looking to give that something to bite into, and it doesn't need to be overly done. I mean, I notice on the tin for the filler, it says to use 36 grit, but that's when we're talking about doing it on the metal. So what I'm looking to do here is just get that clean back, and as you can tell, this has been sprayed a couple of times. So I'll give that a good scotchy, and then I'll get some bog ready and we'll get that in there. Righto, so I've got that mixed up, trying to keep it as consistent as I can. You can see all the hair hanging off it, so that's the fiberglass that I'm talking about, as in fiberglass reinforced. And the idea now is to try and get it in with as least amount of air bubbles as possible. And you might think I've mixed a lot up there, but I don't want to have to do this twice. I don't want to run out, because when I go to sand this, I'm going to cut through my epoxy, and I don't want to have to re-epoxy to put the second coat on. So I'd prefer to have a little bit more than I need than not enough. So like I say, air bubbles are the one to try and avoid. A lot more difficult to work with than normal filler. The hair tends to want to make it a bit difficult like that. I'm going to try and make that nice and proud so that when it comes time to sand it, I don't have to have two goes at it. Whoa, dragged it out. So at this stage it doesn't need to be pretty, it just needs to be in there consistent and no pinholes or air bubbles. I'm thinking that's pretty good, because if I try and do any more I'm going to make a mess of it. Looks a little bit low there. Just wanting to hang a bit out of that where it's thick. So I meant to show you actually with a straight edge, it's not as bad as it appears. When you put a straight edge across that join, it's probably only 3 mil deep. It just looks really bad because it's got the sharp edges. So if you want to speed things up a bit, you can always add the heat gun. So because I'm trying to film it all, normally I just go off and do something and come back. So I'm just going to put a little bit of heat on it. So I thought I'd show you that at the same time. It just speeds that process up, being a chemical reaction. And depending on the temperature on the day, the stuff's really the most effective at about 25 degrees. So it doesn't take much. Righto, so it's actually quite warm now from that chemical process, and it's a little bit tacky still, but I like to get on and pull the top off it before we actually get too hard, because it gets harder to rub. So if I go there now and cut the top off of that, and I'll just turn the vacuum on. So this is 80 grit. Now if you want to make a mess, you can hit that with some 40 grit on the grinder. I'm just trying not to make a massive mess in the shed at the moment because I've got other stuff going on. So I'm going to do a bit of that and then we'll turn the camera back on. But you could hit that with the flat one. I might even put the whizzer on it just to knock it down, and then we'll go back to the hand one. So I've given that a bit of a haircut there now, so I'm just using my, flexible bit of Tasmanian oak, and you can see there when I push on the top how it wants to come away a bit here, so it just lets me know I'm still a bit high through the middle. And a lot of people might go, well, you can see that, but I mean, I'm trying to show people that if they don't do this very often, like me, sometimes you need a little guide. So I've got a little bit of epoxy showing there and here, and obviously there. When I run that through, I can see that that's not looking too bad. So my aim is to get this within, maybe a millimetre or maybe 2 to the finished product, and that way I'll epoxy it again and put my normal filler on. Well, this humid weather with all the rain, I'm sweating it out now. So I've knocked that off a bit with the orbital and the big flat block. So now I'm at a stage where I need a little bit more in here. So before I cut too much closer and lose my epoxy edge, just going to blow the air out of that, put a little bit more in, and then go again. Something else I like to do is I have this wire brush that's sort of a bog only wire brush. So if I'm doing something like this, I can run that over with the air, and if you've got a bubble, an air bubble close to the edge, you can see bubbles are in that. Even on normal filler, it'll just break through the ones that might be near the surface, and that just reduces those pinholes you got when you get further down the track. Just like that. Okay, so I'll put a bit more in there. Thing is, if you're going to go over the top, you just got to make sure you're not going over bare metal. And you'll see there, I'm right on the edge of it, but when I sand that back, it'll go back to the epoxy. And then while I was doing that, I also went in and filled some of these holes up that you'd seen earlier. So I'll just keep working away, and probably one little more application of a few bits and pieces to fill up some holes, and I'll pretty much have the desired effect. Now, it's going to be really hard to show you in the video, but you'll see sometimes a really light area, so you might have got to a point where there's a bit of an air bubble underneath. So I normally get a scribe and just go around. If I see anything that's a bit low, I'll just make sure that I pick the top off that. Now, I know people are going to think, well, if they're close to the surface, there must be some more underneath. Like I said earlier, I'm trying to keep them to a minimum, but at the same token, I need to make sure that I get the ones that are anywhere near the surface, because this will now get epoxied. Then we'll have the normal filler, then more epoxy. So I'm just trying to make sure I've got nothing sitting under the surface that's going to be a problem later. So that's just about a done deal now. So I've given that a rub through with some 120 just on this block. I've just run that through with the 120, got a nice finish. And you can see here where, it's got the filler and then the epoxy all the way around with the bare metal. And I've made sure in all cases that I haven't actually left any of that filler on the bare metal if I put some on it in the second coat. So now I'll get that cleaned up and get some epoxy on it pretty much straight away. Ideally, when you're doing this sort of thing, the quicker you can seal that, and I'm talking you know, minutes and hours, not days, but ideally now that that's like that, I want to mix up some epoxy and get it straight on there and get it sealed up, keep that rust out. So that's come out real nice. So that's just enables me to put a base on it so that I can now use my normal filler and do the rest of the panels. So I like to skim the whole panel, even with these new old stock quarters, I'll probably still skim the whole thing, just get all my gaps and my alignment right. I'm not a real fan of using a whole lot of spray primers and spray fillers. Much prefer to do it in filler. It's looking pretty good now when you consider that's all steel. The only filler is that bit I've just done. So that should come out real nice. We've dropped into Custom Elite Interiors today to check out where he's up to with some of the BOSSXC stuff, but I just happened to notice this. There you go, mate.
Good, mate.
Mate, this is pretty spectacular.
It is, yeah.
So this is the one that was up at the Hot Rod Show?
Yeah, that's right.
Up at Castle Hill?
Yeah.
So it was all sort of closed up a bit there, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was kind of last minute, got finished for that show. And then straight after was taken to a workshop, get some stuff sorted out on it.
Alright, well I'm going to cut you off there because I'm going to bring you this in extra in the next couple of weeks. So sensational car, but we're here for top 60, so we'll check out and do some work and bring this to you later. So I'm out here with Simon, so we're just looking at where he's up to because I thought I'd come out and just check out where things are progressing. So obviously you're on the door trims, mate. Tell us what you're up to.
Yeah, so I thought I'd start on the rear doors so I can work forward. And pretty much just make it all from scratch really, because that's the shape of the original door trim, which is going to suit the style of dash and everything we're running. And then can't really reuse any of that because it's all just got way too much shape and it won't suit the...
Yeah, so the issues we're facing is that obviously the back door on the XC is a lot different to the FG, and we were surprised how deep this was on the FG because we need to put the door handle in here, the FG handle, and the plan is to use the door handle, the switch and the grab handle out of the FG and then try and emulate the shape of that, but obviously to fit a totally different shaped door and car. So Simon's decided to start at the back because they're probably going to be the more complex to get it to fit and to work. And as you can see, the idea is to get that to look similar to that, and we're not running a rear speaker so we don't need the grille, but we want to have that shape and to get the right feeling and the right flow about the car. That's really what we're aiming at.
Yeah.
So you've made these out of timber obviously?
Yeah, so that's all just MDF timber, and it's just all been primed, so it seals it all.
Seals it up. And then obviously the front one, and then we'll progress down with that. So tell me what you're up to here. Obviously you've got a little bit of fabric on there.
Yeah, so I've made up all of the framing under there, same again, just out of timber and chocks and whatever. So that's all screwed in to get the shape and sanded. And then I've basically just put this material over the top, which I can then fiberglass.
Okay, so this looks to me to be like a hood lining trim or something?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, something that'll soak up the resin obviously.
It soaks up really well. And
so those people that may or may not have used fiberglass, I can remember we used to make model aeroplanes where you actually had the frame of the plane and then you put your satin fabric over it and then you use dope, as they used to call it, which was probably just a resin.
Yeah.
And then paint that on, and that makes it nice and firm. And this is the same sort of process. The material's there to hold the shape until the resin can set, and then you can build on that and sand it and work from there. So Interesting choice of fabric, mate. I wouldn't have thought of going that way. In the past, I'd use like t-shirt style material. You go to the shop and buy something that's going to soak the resin up but hold the shape.
Yeah, I just use this because it's a bit thicker.
Yeah, I like it.
So you got about 4 or 5 mil to work with.
Yep.
And once some resin goes into that, it's still lightweight, but it's just a bit
nice
stronger.
and strong.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to do a bit of that today.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
Yep. Alright, so just mixing up the resin now so I can lay it over it. I'll just get soak it all in as much as I can. With the thickness of the material and what I've got underneath, there's not really a lot of filling to do, so you could probably even resin that without any matting. And then I'll put a layer of foam over the top of that once it's all set as well. So with the resin I usually put, like I'll use all of this up on just this section.
Yeah, so you're primarily trying to create a shell.
Yeah, yeah. You can never put too much really. I think the more you put on the better.
I find it really interesting at the moment. We've been doing fiberglassing on the front spoiler, and now all of a sudden we're fiberglassing on the trim.
Yeah, there's always a use for it. It is handy. You can just do so much with it.
I mean, I had forgotten really about how many different products we use in the build of a car until you start recording it. It's interesting just how much we do, how many different things we use, and the processes that we use overlap in so many areas.
Yeah, I find even on every car I'll be doing something a bit different, or I might, you learn something new on every job, or a different technique or a different material to use. Like before we were saying about even just using this material for as your base. We used to use like speaker cloth.
Yeah.
But it was just it was very thin. So when you use that, you'd have to layer it up with a lot of fiberglass. And then I started using like jumper material.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah,
like a jersey.
Yeah, and then that's pretty good too because it's thick and it's got, it's
even if you want the stretch, like I've found doing speaker pods, if you need it to sort of create those nice curves, where you have the mount for the speaker and then it goes out to the edge and it creates that natural curve with the stretch fabric.
Yeah. See, something that has a lot of shape in it, I'll use like that jumper material because you can really do that. You can stretch it more than what you can with this material.
Yeah.
But I found this stuff's good for this shape. This worked out really well because I didn't have to stretch it too much. The most shape is probably that corner, which that worked out pretty good there anyway. So.
All right, we'll probably go into time lapse now. So obviously that's starting to fill up from the back now, mate. It's looking like it's starting to really...
Yeah, it's really soaked in now. You can see the wood starting to come through and it's coming a bit transparent. And because of the thickness of this material, once that resin sets...
So what was that, about 300 mil you put into that?
Yeah,
okay.
300 mil, yeah. So it's... Yeah, I don't know. You think it's a fair bit for that one little area. But yeah, I'd rather use more than not enough. It's it's solid.
And obviously once that's dried now, you'll be able to pretty much sand through that and even right through the fabric because the resin's right through it.
Yeah.
Yep. See, even I'm learning something. Well, thanks, mate. That's really informative, and hopefully the followers will get a bit out of that. So we'll just keep dropping out and follow up on what Simon's doing. because he's got still quite a lot to go, and he's doing most of that from here now. So I'll just keep dropping out and keep you all informed. Thanks, mate.
Cool. Thank you. Cheers.